I know what you're thinking, and no, I don't love B-dubs just because I'm a buffalo with wings. Frankly, that's offensive and reductionist.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we are going to be talking about the Abilene Flying Bison, a collegiate summer level team that plays in the Mid-America League in Abilene, Texas. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett. And of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to be joined by Kat Duguay, who is the Director of Marketing with the Abilene Flying Bison. Kat, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm so good. How are you? And thank you so much for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much for coming and joining and talking about the Flying Bison. What a fun brand this is, and what an interesting story it must be. I will admit, I don't know the story. When I saw Flying Bison, all I could think was buffalo wings, which is my favorite. Buffalo chicken is my favorite kind of bird. So I saw Flying Bison and thought maybe there's a relationship there. I don't think that that's what the story is. Can you tell me how come a team in Abilene, Texas is called the Flying Bison?
Absolutely. I would love to. And I also want to say you did just give me an idea for an alternate jersey one year, which is just like a buffalo wing, just a saucy wing on the jersey.
A saucy wing on the jersey, a flying, the wing that came from the Flying Bison. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll come back to that.
All right.
So there's a couple of different elements that we brought in with this. One part of it was reaching out to the community and having them nominate some team names that made sense to them. Another part was us kind of internally thinking about, what speaks to Abilene, what brings in some of its history, but also what can we do that's a little bit fun and is going to yield to some like cool, fun branding and marketing. The owner of the team and I are big. I mean, we're all big sports fans, but I feel like him and I are very big on like, team colors and uniforms and logos, and we just really pour over stuff like that. And so I think we had that in mind, that we also wanted to create a brand that was going to be, work really well for the types of things you want to do in the future with promotions, giveaways, etc. So in Abilene, there is an Air Force base called Dyess Air Force Base, which is a huge employer of the area and has been there for a long time. So we knew we kind of wanted to bring in something flying related as kind of a nod to the Air Force Base. And so that one was kind of a natural choice with the flying. Now, we did play around with the name Space Bison because we thought it'd be real cool if he could be a little astronaut, to which everyone in Abilene said, that doesn't make sense. This is an Air Force Base. And we were like, valid.
I guess there may be a couple of other places in Texas more closely associated with space.
Yeah, maybe. So we thought, okay, and this was coming from, I'm not from Abilene and the owner is also not from Abilene. So we're like, maybe we don't know best.
Okay.
Yeah. So with the bison, Abilene was founded by bison herders back in 1888. And so that kind of like was a very prevalent animal in the area.
Yeah.
They no longer roam the streets of Abilene, which is probably a good thing. Now they do, just in the form of our team and our players.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was a few names that were up for nomination by the community. Flying Bison was one of them. They also wanted to kind of revert to the most recent organized baseball team name, which is the Prairie Dogs.
Oh.
That was most recently in Abilene 10 years ago. And then we had, hands down, my least favorite name, which was the Yodel Dogs, which were suggested.
The Yodel Dogs.
Yes, which apparently is a coyote, but I'm like, no.
All right.
Yeah, love the creativity, but no.
I have to interject. I actually have a cat who has been with me for 4 years now. She is a COVID cat. She came to me because the warehouse where she was living was shutting down for COVID for 3 months. They said, can you watch her for 3 months? Because of her crazy voice, she's now 18 years old, still has the crazy voice, still with me. So it's the longest 3 months ever. But her name is Yodel. And so,
really?
So she's a Yodel cat. Yes.
She's a Yodel cat.
Yes. Yeah. So she's got this. Yeah. So she's got this great little voice. And when they called her Yodel, and I said, I think that'll stick.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's, if I heard a cat named Yodel, I would be like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so
She may show up here. She shows up on the podcast every once in a while, announcing her
cool.
presence. So
I
I
hope I
didn't
see
mean to
her.
interrupt.
No, no, that's okay. I need to know about cat stuff as being another cat, you know, so I feel like it makes sense.
That's right. You are a cat, so
I am a cat, yeah.
that's my cat news.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I was not a big yodel dog person because I thought it was a little silly goofy, but
Mhm.
I also that's a thing I was able to learn about summer ball teams is that some of them get real fun and creative, and I love that. I mean, I think it's so cool to learn about some of these teams I've never heard of
Mhm.
before.
I have
Yeah,
just the podcast for you.
yeah,
Yeah, it's called Baseball by Design. You can learn
perfect.
all about all these team names.
Let me look it up. So the community chose Flying Bison. We did have a few people say like, "What does this even mean?"
Mm.
And once we explained it and kind of how we got there, and I said, "Wait for the branding. Once it all comes together, I think you're gonna get it more." It is hard to just hear two words and think, "Oh, that's our team name." Um, there's also this amazing sculpture located at Frontier, Texas, which is like a little museum about Abilene. That is like 7 or 8 giant iron, like maybe 20-foot long iron pipes that hold up these flying bison that are
Mm.
like flying through the air, and then at night they glow and have lights and stuff. And so that was one of the first things I saw when I went to Abilene, and I was like, those are flying bison right there. So
Very cool.
that kind of helps solidify.
Yeah, yeah. So when I heard flying bison, we were sort of joking, right, about the idea of buffalo wings, but
Mhm.
it's not an animal with wings that's flying under its own steam. And as you told, it's the connection to the Air Force Base. He's got the flying ace uniform on there. He's got the goggles and the scarf and
Mhm.
the leather helmet. So he's flying the plane. He's not just flying around with his own buffalo wings there. Um,
Yep.
that obviously, as you've explained, is a wink and a nod to the Air Force being there. I'm sure before the branding was unveiled, people had that thought that it's going to be just an animal who flies. It's going to be like a buffalo Pegasus.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And people were reaching out about that, and they're like, "I don't see how this isn't just the Buffalo Wild Wings buffalo." Especially in lieu of the commercial they have. That's he's out there with the wings, and
Right.
I get that. And I think when we first discussed the name, we did have a bit of a back and forth over like, does he fly himself? Is he the flying bison?
Mhm.
And we decided that there's just a lot of parts of that we didn't think were gonna make sense in terms of like uniforms and such. And also, Abilene's a very opinionated community in a great way because we want the input. We want people to feel very connected to this team. And a lot of people were just like, I don't think that makes sense. So we were like, okay, and that's cool with us. And so we played around with both styles of logos. So one of them did have like wings coming out of him.
Uh-huh.
Um, we also played with him having like airplane wings come out of his back,
Mm,
kind of like, like
okay.
pew.
Yeah.
Um, and
For
then
the
we just
listener at
decided,
home, Kat did this.
kind of like I feel like it's like kind of Buzz Lightyear esque, where maybe you
Mm.
press a button on him and it's a little pew.
Oh, I get it.
Um, you see what I'm saying?
I do. I do.
Uh,
Absolutely. The sound effects help.
yes, thank you. But then we decided, no, we know that in our hearts he is, piloting a force of
Mhm.
flying bison. And so yeah, that's where we thought let's really kind of lean into the Dias Air Force Base angle and have him, be kind of piloting one of their popular planes, which is a B-1, which is also how we got to the mascot's name, which again was community chosen. And this was just knocked out of the park. The name Bomber. People were like,
Nice.
I will lose it if you don't call him Bomber. And we're like, listen, he's Bomber then.
Right. Right. Mm,
Yeah. So now he's our little pilot bomber. So I think it kind of worked out.
that is a pretty great name. There are, it's not uncommon for minor league teams to use the same animal in different ways. There are lots of cats, lots of bears, lots of, there's all sorts of things out there.
Mhm,
So bison is not as common, but there are a couple out there. You've
mhm,
got the Buffalo Bisons, who
mhm.
hilariously put an S on the end of bison and pronounce the S as a Z, so it's
Bisons.
not bison. You have the who I will always, I think, call the Gem City Bison, who were up here closer to me in
Mhm.
Wyoming. I don't know. They're like a roaming team. They're roaming the plains of the
Oh,
upper Midwest here. Yeah, I'm working on it.
clever.
I'm working on
Yeah.
it. It's
No,
early,
I
but I'm
like it.
um did those other teams come into play when you were looking at this branding? Like, were those other teams part of this conversation when you were unveiling your branding?
Yeah, absolutely. And even as far as the Buffalo Bills, which, really have nothing to do with us in a
Mhm.
variety of ways, but we wanted to weigh all the other, how, like you said, how many teams have Bison in it, or even Buffalo, same family. And so we wanted to, that's the other thing, is kind of come up with something a little more unique. Now, we didn't want to go the route of like mythical where we're creating a whole new animal, but we realized that we didn't have anyone super local, and we were not going to go with an S on the end, which
Mm.
apparently there's a lot of debate about that, but apparently the S on the end is also true. But
Oh.
again, the community was like, no S, and we're like,
Mm.
all right.
I would have not thought. I thought it was just sort of antiquated. I didn't realize it was also accepted. But I'm trying to be a
One of those things.
descriptivist, not a prescriptivist about these things. So if they both work,
Absolutely.
then use them both.
Yeah, yeah, and what's funny? I was actually just out the other day, and there was a like local baseball team there who were called the Bisons with an S on the end. And so, sometimes it throws me into a little bit of a mental crisis as the marketing director of, did we go with the wrong one?
Oh
And
no.
sometimes I'm trying to figure out how to, make it plural, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, uh, but yeah, so we did want to see, what are other teams doing and make sure we're not going, even remotely close to them.
Mhm.
Now, I did find out post team name that there's a brewery in Buffalo, New York called the Flying Bison Brewery. And I
I
was
was
like, well, that's cool. And there's something here that we need to do, cross country type situation.
This was on my list to ask you about here when I was looking up the name and trying to find, information about the team.
Mhm,
I stumbled across the Flying Bison Brewing Company, which
mhm,
is in Buffalo, and not close. And I'm sure there is no possibility for brand confusion. So there's certainly not going to be any lawsuits or anything like that.
mhm,
But I was curious about the possibility for you all to work together. And one of the things we haven't mentioned is that 2024 was your first season. So this is
mhm.
you've got a season under your belt here. I'm wondering, yeah, did was there any communication at all? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Was there anything at all there?
So far, not yet.
Okay.
But that is a great reminder that it's off season now, and it's
Mm.
ready. I'm ready to be weird out here on social media with other accounts in a good way, of course. But
Of course.
I think even just like a shout out that like, oh, that's our namesake up in Buffalo or something fun like that, I think
Mhm.
would be cool. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And if you're listening to this, Flying Bison Brewery, and I know you are, what's up? Let's talk.
Chances
I
are
don't know
they
why.
are. There's a pretty good
They're
at any given person at any given time. There's a good chance they're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, 100%. My boss is listening. Hello, George. Good morning.
George, hello. I think I heard
George,
George
hello.
on the Earn Fun Average podcast. Is that right? He was with you on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he was. And I've done one with our general manager as well. And so this time I thought I just want the spotlight.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. This is all about Cat.
this is Cat Show. Yep.
So, speaking of that, it's been a season. You said that
Mhm,
there were some doubters early on, and that is always, always, always 100% the case with any
mhm.
new minor league baseball brand. But it's been a year now. How has the brand been received? How did that first year go?
Well, I want to add to one of the big things that was causing people to doubt our possible success is that we were not able, and still aren't currently able, to sell beer out of our stadium.
Oh.
Yes. And so, that's not, to me, not a life or death situation. Although
Mhm,
I love a beer at a game, so I don't
mhm,
want to,
mhm.
I need to make that true for everyone. But but there were a lot of people saying like you're never going to be successful because of that. Um, and then Abilene does have a storied baseball past, and the team that was there 10 years ago did not leave in the best of, the
Ooh,
vibes weren't amazing when they left. So
yeah.
um, now, all that said, we worked with this knowledge in mind before the season started, that we needed to make up for the fact that we can't sell beer, and we need to kind of put a new like impression in people of Abilene about baseball, because they were kind of rightfully so skeptical about us even staying more than one season. A lot of people expressed how upsetting it is to, emotionally and financially invest in a team that's then like, all right, later, losers. And we're like, we would, we came into this knowing this and that
Yeah.
we would not be doing that. So
Okay.
I think us doing kind of that outreach prior to the season starting is what led to us having, hands down, I mean, I can't imagine a better season for us in general, let alone for our first season. But we people were beating the doors down on opening day. We were, I mean, way past capacity of the entire like ballpark. And then for the rest of the season, we had great attendance. I mean, to see the people rocking Bison stuff. I mean, the fans got so invested in such a short amount of time. I can't talk enough about what their buy-in means to us, because obviously without them, I mean, we would be in a way different place if people were not kind of getting behind what we're doing. And so I think showing them up front that we really care, we're very passionate and genuine, and that we want this to be something that they enjoy, really kind of helped build their trust. And then once they started coming to games and seeing what we were doing there, that kind of, furthered it and showed them that like we take this very seriously. But we had, the highest attendance from the rest of the league by, I mean, tenfold probably. It's just gone amazing for us. And they're really invested in our players, like I said, in our merchandise and our brand. And there are some really committed Flying Bison fans out there. And,
Hmm.
it makes me, I always talk, I could cry about it, and I could for sure, but because, it's just so nice. And as a fellow sports fan, I think about if I was in this position to start being a fan of a team from the ground up, and,
Yeah.
they're really part of making the history of the Flying Bison. And that's so important to us.
It's funny that you bring up the beer sales. We have a collegiate summer level team here in Fort Collins, Colorado, the Fort Collins Foxes. They're about a half mile from where I live, so we can walk there or bike there or scoot there.
Cool.
And they play at a city park, and there's no beer sales there. You can bring your own beer, but there's no beer sales. Can you bring your own beer to the Flying Bisons game? Oh, you're going through a tunnel. I think maybe
Not yet. No, not yet, but we're hoping.
But yeah, I mean, it didn't, honestly, I don't remember it phasing me at all that you couldn't buy beer there. Now, if I couldn't buy ice cream there, that would be a different question. I know that you all, I believe I've seen some Abilene Flying Bison helmet sundaes out there in the world. I think that they have been circulated around. I know that you've encountered some of my fellow helmet Sunday collectors, because I've seen their photos as well. So long as you can buy ice cream there, I think that's obviously the most important thing.
We even have one of our partners is called Bahama Bucks, and they do like fancy snow cone type, situations. And so we have a Bahama Bucks truck parked outside where you can get like these wild, like snow cone Sunday almost type situations. So I think we have plenty to keep you entertained. We can put whatever you want in the helmet. Next year, I'm like, we got to pack these helmets with things. Doesn't have to just be ice cream and treats. It could be fries, nachos. I've seen a lot of stuff.
Oh, there's all sorts of.
I had one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, let's go. Let's see what we can do next year. That's even more fun with these.
I have a sort of streak going of episodes in which I have mentioned the fact that I recently went to a baseball game, actually 2 baseball games in Japan. And in Japan, you can get all sorts of things in helmets. There's sort of no end to the things you can get there. Last question I have for you, Kat, about this brand is, there's a handful of different marks, as is typically the case with new minor league baseball brands. The centerpiece is this character, Bomber, as you point out. In a batting stance, you've got a roundel with just the character's head there with the goggles on his head. And then there's a couple of sort of aviation themed script based logos with like the airline looking wings, an A with some airline wings, and then an underlined script, and then Flying Bison with the B has the wings on it. There are a handful of different marks to choose from. Based on your experience this season, which one is the most popular? What are people snatching up at the team store?
Oh, hands down the full, what we call like our full Abilene Flying Bison logo. So our little man and then the words underneath. That's, I mean, the one that we get people like on social media and stuff will be like, oh my gosh, I love that logo. So that one, and I think makes sense. It's so bold, and I love it. I think we have amazing logos. So that one people love. locally people really like this script Abilene that I have on this jersey.
Hmm.
Which makes sense because they want to represent their community. And I think it's a little bit of, again, a nod to some of the baseball history there. But when people see this full logo, that's when they're like, okay, hold on, what's this about? I am personally a fan of the circle logo. I'm kind of a circle logo person because I think they create, nice symmetrical images. But the classic logo is the way to go, 100%.
Fantastic. Well, it was really fun to see you appear on the scene around this time last year, and it's been intriguing to watch the attention that the team gets, and now to know the full story behind the nickname. It's just it's a really fun brand and a really fun name, and I can see why. That's the logo I would want. I would want the full. I don't always want the full logo. Sometimes it's just the character or whatever. But I think because Flying
Yeah.
Bison is such a unique, fun name, sort of subverting expectations about what bison might be doing. Which
Exactly. Yeah.
they are not they're not exactly nimble, I don't think, when as an animal. So it's
No, but our mascot, you should see. I mean, this man, he's like, you're not using my sporting ability enough out there. We're like, well, brother, let's get Bomber in the air.
there you go. Let's get Bomber in the air, indeed.
Yeah.
Kat, where can people find you on social media, and where can people find the team, and where can people go get some of this great merch?
Oh my gosh. You can find the team at Abilene Flying Bison on Facebook and Instagram, and then at ABI Flying Bison on X and TikTok. I'm trying to get the kids into the TikTok, so please help me.
The youth.
The youth, yeah, the youths. You can find me, Katerina Veronica. Good luck just spelling it all and finding it all. I, stay pretty behind the scenes in terms of my own social media. Not for any reason other than the fact that I'm lazy. But you'll see me commenting on my own stuff like you have to as a marketing director.
Nice. Yeah.
And then, come visit us, AbileneFlyingBison.com. We are in the midst of revamping our merch store, which should be done today or tomorrow. And we're going to have some new stuff on there, game day hats, etc. So come check us out, shop at AbileneFlyingBison.com.
Awesome. Kat, thank you so much. Best of luck in your first off season. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2025. And I should say, Texas is one of the possibilities for our Curved Brim meetup next year. So we may be seeing you with Curved Brim Media next year.
Oh my gosh, fingers crossed. I hope you guys can come. Please, if you get to Abilene, game's on me. Thank you so much, Paul. I am so excited I got to chat with you today and looking forward to talking again at some point.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so pleased to welcome to the podcast, as always, Ranger Amy Burnett, Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent. Ranger Amy, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, we just finished watching Game 3 of the World Series.
Yes, we did.
Just hours before this episode goes live. We're talking about the Abilene Flying Bison in Abilene, Texas. Now, how prevalent were flying bison at one point across the plains and the skies of the United States and North America?
Well, no one really knows because they were here before anyone who could write anything down was alive.
If flying bison were real, they would have enormous wings. How much does an actual bison, the terrestrial kind, weigh?
About 1 ton.
And a ton is?
2,000 pounds.
For an animal that weighs 2,000 pounds, to get off the ground, you'd have to have some huge wings. Approximately, how many gallons of buffalo sauce would it take to cover one of those wings?
It would take approximately 568 gallons.
See, this is good research that you've done. The Abilene Flying Bison.
Yes.
It's ludicrous to think that a buffalo would have actual wings. This is not the buffalo from the Buffalo Wild Wings commercial with wings, but a buffalo might.
Can you imagine how tasty that would be?
I'm telling you, it would be delicious. You'd have to cook it for a long time, though, because it would be enormous. A buffalo might
Paul,
fly.
I have a question for you.
All right.
How do you eat a bison?
Very carefully.
1 bite at a time.
1 bite at a time. So given that a buffalo is not going to have an actual wing or wings, 2 that it would need to fly, the only way a bison is going to fly is, of course, the way the Abilene Flying Bison approached the situation, which was not to make it a animal with wings, but an actual a buffalo with like flying World War I flying ace gear, and he's flying an airplane.
Yeah.
So that's how he's flying. He has hooves, not hands.
Right.
How good do you think a bison would be at operating an airplane?
Pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it was one of those airplanes that you have to like power with your feet. Then it might be pretty good. And they have strong legs. Those hooves are really great for traction.
Oh,
Have you ever seen a bison slip in the snow or on ice?
no, I don't guess so. And
See?
I've been to Yellowstone where I've seen many, many bison.
Yeah, and they don't slip.
Yeah, okay.
It's like having cleats.
As any good baseball mascot should.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you use cleats on the baseball diamond if you want to get some purchase and scoot around the bases. Well, scoot is not the right word, but just wheeling around the bases like that guy did today. Who was it? He was just like, he just powered through and
Are you talking about Giancarlo Stanton running in slow motion and getting thrown out at home plate?
no, he was like a sloth.
That was terrible. That was such a terrible play to send him at all. But also, yeah, he was running in slow motion for sure. Okay, Ranger Amy, in addition to being an animal aficionado and a wildlife expert, you are a fan of beer. You like a beer at a ball game.
I really do. More
So-
than I should.
So there's a brewery, the Flying Bison Brewery in upstate New York in Buffalo. Here's some beers that they have. They have the Vienna style Rusty Chain. They've got an IPA that is a Buffalo Check.
Mm-hmm.
They have a Space Cowboy IPA named for another baseball team that just won the AAA championship,
Some called me the gangsta of love.
soon to be featured on this podcast, the Space Cowboys. A Juniper White IPA, a Cosmic Drip
I
IPA,
don't know why he's ignoring
Damage
me.
Control IPA, Juice Caboose
You don't
IPA,
like any of my jokes.
Honey Badger Hefeweizen, Peach White Ale,
Honey
Hits
Badger,
Different
don't
Sour,
care.
Green Tea Seltzer. Wow.
Mm.
Hey, I can keep my record going of mentioning that time we were in Japan. Green Tea Seltzer sounds like something we might have gotten at a baseball game.
We'd call it
And-
matcha seltzer because we've been to Japan.
All right, so all these beers, there's an Aviator Red, another minor league baseball team, the Aviators.
I kind of feel like they missed out on making some bison puns here.
It's true. My question for you, as a beer aficionado, if you're going to be at an Abilene Flying Bison game, it's going to be hot, right? Like it's Texas.
Yeah, it's Texas.
What of these beers sounds good to you?
The Big Bottom IPA.
Big Bottom IPA is your beer of choice.
I just made that up. That's actually not one of them.
Is that not one of them?
No, but I'm just like I thought of something that what do bison have? They're big, right?
I see.
Big butts.
Okay, so you just made up a beer. You refused to answer the question. It's late. Ranger Amy,
I'm going
thanks for
to-
being here. It was great to see you. Ranger Amy can be found
I would drink the honey badger because honey badger don't care.
on Instagram at The Real Ranger Amy and on Twitter at Ranger Amy. Ranger Amy, thanks for this ridiculous segment. Let's go talk to Dan Simon in one of his Studio Simon Stumpers.
Let's go talk to Dan.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to welcome back to the podcast, as always, my very good friend Dan Simon of Studio Simon, Louisville-based designer extraordinaire, who brings us every week a Studio Simon Stumper trivia question. Dan, good morning. Back from your international travels. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you. Looking forward to doing a stumper here based on an animal we've already done but pronounced differently.
We did do the Buffalo Bisons, who hilariously pronounced their name with a Z, and they pluralized bison with an S on the end of it. But hey, they've been doing it that way since the 1800s, so God bless them. But yeah, so we've done bison before, but we've never done flying bison, and that maybe that factors into the Studio Simon Stumper this week.
Oh, it definitely does. We're talking about an airborne mammal, and that is going to be the theme of today's Studio Simon Stumper. So let's do it. Now, I'm not sure how many other examples there were or are of minor league teams with airborne mammal names, but I do know of at least one other. And our
Okay.
studio assignment stumper today is about that team. And
Okay.
it asks, which of these was the airborne mammal name of the independent American Association team that played in Grand Prairie, Texas from 2008 to 2019? So it's fairly recent.
Fairly recent. Okay.
Okay. Was it A, the Flyhounds, B, the Air Hogs, or C, the Sky Rats?
These are all terrific. I was going to be surprised if this was a name that I did not recognize, being an American Association team and being fairly recent. I can tell you from actual lived experience and human knowledge that it was the Air Hogs and not the Sky Rats or the Flyhounds. Was it Flyhounds and Sky Rats? Were those the other two?
Yes.
Those are definitely good names, very believable. But because I know about the Air Hogs, I'm going to go with Air Hogs.
Okay. And you are indeed correct. I don't want to make these stumpers so easy that you get them every time easily. But then again, I don't want them, I prefer that you're not just guessing, that you can either make an educated guess or somewhere in your memory, the answer exists. And the fact that in this case, it came up immediately to you, you didn't have to dig deep into those memory banks, is a good thing. So you are correct. And you, as a Philadelphia Philly fan, might be interested to know that their first ever manager was a former Philadelphia Philly, Pete Incaviglia, who was on the Phillies team that went to the 1993 World Series, but did not win, unfortunately for you Phillies fans, thanks to a gentleman named Joe Carter.
Oft discussed on this podcast. And it's very funny. My running buddy Chris would love this conversation right now because we were literally this morning running and sort of joking about random baseball players, and the name Pete Incaviglia came up.
No
And
way.
I told him the whole story about how I wrote an article about the Laredo Lemurs, another independent minor league baseball team out there, and I called Pete Incaviglia, who was then the manager of that team, for some quotes about their nickname. And I have Pete Incaviglia's phone number in my cell phone. I actually have, like, if Pete Incaviglia were to like place a call and say, "Hey Paul, let's go watch World Series Game 4," it would come up as Pete Incaviglia in my phone. I have his number in my phone from that article that I wrote about Laredo.
Well, that's interesting because I have a similar story, though I never spoke to this gentleman. I have Jim Bouton's
Oh,
number in my phone. I emailed him and got a response back about something, but it's just weird to have like a notable former major leaguer in your contacts. Okay, but let's talk about another manager of the Grand Prairie Air Hogs. By the way, I was kind of hesitating there. They were originally the Grand Prairie Air Hogs, but then they they went by the name the Texas Air Hogs. While still playing in Grand Prairie, why they changed it, I don't know. But they had another manager named James Frisbee. Now, I would like to think that whenever he got ejected from a game, the team's radio announcer would have informed the listeners that Frisbee got tossed.
it'd be almost criminal if they did not, right? Like Frisbee got tossed. I mean, that just writes itself. This is I'd have to look back at the article I wrote. There was an explanation for why they switched from Grand Prairie to Texas, and it was something to do with like they were splitting time between two cities or something. There was some story like that.
Yes, that's exactly what. Even though I said I don't know why they did it, that was the impetus for it. I'm really not sure of the specifics of it. There was another team in the league that they kind of joined forces with, and I don't know. And they, for a couple of years, I believe 2 seasons, they did play in 2 different locations in Texas. But then they stopped doing that and then just played in Grand Prairie again. The whole thing was just a little confusing to me, which is why I didn't go into detail about it. But you're correct. That was part of the reason for that.
That is the vagaries of independent baseball. You know, when you said that you were going to talk about flying mammals, my head went immediately to your hometown, Louisville Bats, and also, of course, my old stomping grounds had the they had the Richmond Braves at the time, but now my old stomping grounds of Richmond, Virginia, has, of course, the flying squirrels. So there were a couple of mammals that I thought of, flying mammals that I thought of when you first brought this up.
Yes, and I am currently working on a top secret brand identity that I can't give you the specifics of.
Who is it? We won't tell.
But the name that they were originally going to go with was a flying mammal. We're going with the same mammal, but it is not flying anymore. So
interesting.
Its feet are planted on the earth. So
okay. And at the time of this recording, we are one day. You already know, of course, but we are one day from learning what the Oklahoma City brand is going to be. So that gets unveiled tomorrow at the time of this recording. As you are listening to this, listener, you already know what that brand is because it will have been out for a few days by the time this comes out.
I'm excited to learn what they're going with.
Are you, Dan?
I am.
Dan Simon, thank you so much. As always, certainly appreciate these conversations, these great trivia questions. Dan's on Instagram at @studio_Simon. I'm going to keep inviting Dan to collaborate on Instagram posts and see how many I can get him to take the bait on. So it's in the meantime, Dan, thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
See you then.